When Jesus Christ walked the earth, he didn't just speak about grace, mercy, and forgiveness. He warned us. He warned us about what the world would look like as time moved forward. And today it's becoming harder to ignore how closely his words line up with what we see around us. Jesus said in Matthew 24 that many would come in his name and deceive many, not with obvious evil, but with confusion, with messages that sound loving, sound inclusive, and sound wise, yet quietly pull people away from truth. He said deception would increase and that even the elect could be led astray if they weren't watchful. Look at the world today. We see confusion not just tolerated, but celebrated. The most basic truths about identity, creation, and purpose, things that were once obvious, are now argued against, redefined, or completely rejected. Jesus warned us this would happen. He said a time would come when truth would be traded for lies, and people would choose what feels good over what is right. In Matthew 24:12, Jesus said, "Because lawlessness will increase, the love of many will grow cold." That verse hits hard today. We see anger everywhere, division everywhere, compassion replaced by outrage, people shouting past one another instead of listening, a world that claims to care deeply yet shows very little love when truth is spoken. Jesus also warned us about false prophets. He said they would appear harmless, like sheep, but inwardly they would be wolves. In other words, they wouldn't look dangerous. They would look confident, polished, and convincing. And today, false teachers don't always stand behind pulpits. Many stand behind microphones, cameras, and platforms, telling people to reject God's design and replace it with man-made ideas. The Bible tells us God is not the author of confusion. Yet confusion has become the spirit of the age. We are told to silence common sense, to deny reality, to accept everything without question. And if you don't, you're labeled hateful, outdated, or dangerous. Jesus told us this would happen. He said the world would hate truth because it hated him first. In John 14:6, Jesus said, "I am the way, the truth, and the life." Not one truth among many, but the truth. And when a culture rejects truth, it doesn't become freer. It becomes lost. Jesus also warned that people would become lovers of themselves, that pride would grow, that humility would fade. And today we live in a world that elevates self above God, self above family, and self above reality. Anything that challenges that self-focus is attacked. But Jesus never told his followers to worship themselves. He told them to deny themselves and follow him. Yet here's the part many people miss. Jesus didn't give these warnings to scare us. He gave them to prepare us. In Luke 21, he said, "When these things begin to happen, stand up and lift up your heads, because your redemption is drawing near." In other words, don't panic. Don't lose hope. God is still in control. Truth doesn't disappear just because it's rejected. Light doesn't stop shining just because darkness gets louder. Jesus promised that even in the last days the gospel would go forth, that his followers would be salt and light in a world losing its direction. Following Jesus was never meant to be easy. It was never meant to be popular, but it was always meant to be faithful. So the question of our time isn't whether the world is changing. Jesus told us it would. The real question is whether believers will stand firm, whether we will choose truth over comfort, God's design over confusion, faith over fear, because Jesus warned us these days would come, and he also showed us how to stand when they did.